Tutorial series FreeCAD to Blender to webGL Part 2 Blender. Installing the add-ons. To use the necessary add-ons in Blender, you have three possibilities depending on your setup. Both add-ons only work in Blender up until 2.79. If you are using OS Linux 1.0 live or installed, Blender and the 3GS exporter add-on are already included. Then you just have to install the explosion add-on and activate both as described later on. You will have to do this again when you restart your computer if you use the live version. In the next OS Linux version, both will be included. If you are using another installed Linux version, install Blender and the two add-ons. In Blender, go to File, User Preferences, Add-ons, click Install Add-on from File, and install the io3.zip add-on, then click the checkbox next to the Import-Export 3GS format. Click Install Add-on from File again, and install the Explosion add-on.zip. Then click the checkbox next to Import-Export Explosion View. Click Save User Settings. A third option is that you use a live Linux USB with Blender on an extra USB drive. To do so, go to the link in the description below, download and extract the file on an ext4 formatted USB drive. It's important that it's ext4 formatted, else you can't execute an application. Once extracted, go into the Blender 2.79 folder, right-click on Blender and select Properties. In the Properties window, go to the Permissions tab and check the checkbox next to Allow Executing File as Program. Then go to the folder Blender 2.79, folder 2.79, Scripts, Add-ons, and paste the unzipped io3 and the Explosion add-on folders there. After this, activate the add-ons and User Preferences add-ons by typing 3 in the search box and click the checkbox next to Import-Export 3.js format, then type Explo in the search box and click the checkbox next to Import-Export Explosion View. Unfortunately, you have to reactivate them every time you restart your system. Basic Blender functions. While I was making this tutorial, I came to the conclusion that certain things may be unclear for those who have never worked with Blender. Blender has a pretty steep learning curve, but since we only need very basic functions, like selecting objects, changing views in the 3D viewport, etc., I installed a Screencast Keys add-on which shows the mouse and key combinations in the bottom left corner of the 3D viewport and made a little intro where we will go over the used functions. First of all, identifying the several areas. This is the 3D viewport within the red square. This is the outliner, and this is the tool panel where the Explosion add-on will be later on. To orbit in the 3D viewport, push the middle mouse button, aka scroll wheel, and move your mouse. To pan, push Shift and your scroll wheel and move your mouse. To zoom in or out, scroll with your scroll wheel, or push Ctrl and your scroll wheel and move your mouse up or down. To toggle between perspective and ortho camera, push the numpad 5. For top view, push numpad 7. For side view, numpad 1 or 3. And while pressing Ctrl, you get the opposite. To select or deselect everything, press A while your cursor is in the 3D viewport. To select objects, right-click on an object in the 3D viewport or left-click in the outliner. To select multiple objects, press Shift while clicking objects or press B with your cursor in the 3D viewport for box select and click Drag. To duplicate one or more objects, press Shift plus D from Duplicate and move them freely or along an axis by pressing X, Y or Z. Left-click to place them. To move one or more objects, press G from Grab and again move them freely or along an axis. Left-click to place them, or left-click and hold on one of the arrows and drag them. With the Z key you can toggle between solid and wireframe, which can be interesting to select things in box select, because in wireframe you don't only select the objects in the front, but also the objects laying behind those. The key combinations will be repeated during the tutorial, but maybe you should pause the video and have a quick practice. Using the add-ons. In Blender, with your cursor in the 3D viewport, press Delete to remove the cube. Go to File, Import, Wavefront.obj. Import the OBJ file in Blender with clamp size 1, X forward and Z up. Zoom in a bit by scrolling with the mouse wheel. Press numpad 5 for ortho view and numpad 7 for top view. Make sure everything is selected by pressing A once or twice. Position the selected parts so that the axis lines cross in the middle. Press numpad 1 and position them again. Make the outliner panel a bit bigger and select the Explode tab in the left tool panel. There are two buttons under Modify FreeCAD names. Remove _01 is for when you used the Assembly Tool workbench in FreeCAD. An underscore and 2 digits are added when you import a part, and with this button you can remove these. As you can see in the Selection View panel, the part name is also the label, so using this workbench you don't need to use the prepare fc export.py script. When you export an OBJ in FreeCAD, all the spaces and hyphens are replaced by underscores. With the Replace Underscore button, you replace the underscores with spaces. Before exporting in .json format, that's JavaScript object notation, with the 3GS exporter, click the Prepare Model for 3GS button. Several things happen unnoticeably, but it's absolutely crucial to get a good result. Part location, rotation, transparency, and specular intensity are set. Now go to File, Export, 3.js.json. In the Export 3 panel, on the left side of your screen, uncheck the UVs checkbox, change Buffer Geometry to Geometry, check Face Materials, uncheck Embed Animation, check Scene and Materials, uncheck Export Textures, click Save Settings at the bottom of the panel. Now select a good location for the export. Give the model a relevant name without spaces, but keep the .json part, and click the Export 3 button on the top right corner. At this point you should save the Blender file before exploding as filename _3, in case you want to change something later on. After exploding, a lot of times it's hard to put Humpty Dumpty together again. Then you have to start all over with importing the OBJ. Now immediately save it again as filename _scene.blend. We're ready to explode the model. Click the Prepare Model to Explode button. This relocates the origin of the parts to their geometry. Click one of the Explode buttons. Depending on the type of model, you can explode all on all 3 axes, or explode on the axis of choice if it's a long model that you want to expand more in a certain direction. Sometimes even that doesn't give the desired result, but once the model is exploded a bit, it's easy to select certain parts and reposition them. With your cursor in the 3D viewport, choose a view with your numpad. 7 is up, 1 and 3 are side views, and with the control key pushed in, you always get the opposite. Push the Z key to get wireframe view and right-click on a part to select it. You can also select multiple parts by pushing B for box select. Left-click, hold and drag to select the parts. Now left-click and hold on one of the arrows to move them to the right position. Once you're content with the positioning, click on Prepare Visibility Groups. This creates 20 render layers and couples the layers to the render layers, if you're wondering what it does. To begin with, all the parts are in the first layer. Decide what you're going to keep there and give it a name in the Visibility Group name box. Now you can select objects in the 3D viewport or in the outliner panel. In the viewport you have to right-click on an object to select them. In the outliner it's left-click. To select multiple parts, use the box select or hold down the Shift key while selecting. Click on number 02 under Move Selected Parts to Visibility Group and give the group a name. Repeat as much as needed. Once you've created the desired amount of visibility groups, click the Export button. Save it as filename _scene.js. You have to add the .js yourself. For your convenience, save it in the same folder where the 3.js file was saved. In the next part, we're going to adjust the HTML and the scene.js file and test the model in a browser. We're also going to add extra information to the 3d.json file, make a HitLab account, start a project and put everything online.